Dank Ferrick. The Mandalorian just gave us an episode that has us a little bit confused. Was that peak Star Wars, or was that just a complete train wreck disaster? We're gonna take a look at the evidence and try to reach a verdict. Chapter 22, Guns for Hire, shows us where Bo-Katan's Mandalorian buddies got off to and where they're headed, all while dropping some major cameos on us. Directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, this is a weird episode, but it's an important one, so let's break it all down. But before we get started, you know how this works. Spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen the episode or you don't want to hear it repeated back to you, why are you still here? Scamper off, be gone, beat it, shoo, scram, vamoose. Just leave. Okay, let's start with the cameos. Yes, those cameos. By now, you most likely know this episode of The Mandalorian features not one, but 4 major cameos. You've got Lizzo as the ruling duchess of the newly introduced independent Outer Rim planet Plaisir 15, which is French for Pleasure 15. Jack Black as her doting husband and former Imperial officer Bombardier. Christopher Lloyd, great Scott, as Hellgate, head of planetary security, and returning director Bryce Dallas Howard, who just really loves an aquatic alien romance subplot. Sure, why not?
You have to go with them.
No, I love you.
Please go.
Chapter 22 was divisive, to say the least, and when we're following the prestige TV drama indictment of fascism known as Andor, not to mention the much more focused Mandalorian storyline of seasons past, there's no way it couldn't be that. Where does Grogu using the Force to guide a big pill bug, thrown by Lizzo, through some hoops, while a gaudily dressed Jack Black giddily praises her, fit against Luthen Rail's "I've made my mind a sunless space" monologue?
I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts.
Were Star Wars' most angry and toxic keyboard warriors who harass sequel trilogy actors off of social media right? Is Star Wars ruined? Once again, no, not really, not at all. While Star Wars is a direct commentary on actual violent and oppressive regimes, as well as the dangers of authoritarian ideology re-rising and re-rising yet again, it is also pretty dumb and silly a lot of the time. We've got Anakin's sand moment. You've got stormtrooper accuracy, or, complete lack thereof. You've got the time that Chewbacca's father-in-law watched softcore porn in the living room in front of everyone. You got Salacious Crumb, and you got Jar Jar Binks. There's, of course, the whole Han shot first thing. There's Huddies. There's Alan Sleaze Pagano. There's B. Arthur, the singing bartender, who, yes, is officially canon. There's the two-headed pod race announcer. There's Babu Frickin' Frick. There's one of the biggest twists in the series, let alone cinema history, retroactively making an on-screen kiss incestuous, which is pretty weird still to this day. There's a whole lot of amputated limbs, and there's the way Grogu jumps. And really, there's a very, very long, and I could keep going on forever, list of things in Star Wars that's kind of dumb. You can't forget we have a senator's fairly prophetic prescription of liberty and the death of democracy in the same movie where a painstakingly slow lightning mummy screeches unlimited power. The classic movie where a drug lord's pet dinosaur eats a stripper is the same one with all the teddy bears who some people hate, who incidentally were inspired by the Viet Cong guerrilla insurgency, but they still got lots of plushies and a cartoon show anyway. The point is, Star Wars is a lot of things. It's commentary on the core basis of human cruelty and greed and grabs for power, but also it's sometimes the Three Stooges. Not all of it was planned, not all of it is serious, and not all of it is great, and honestly, some of the dialogue is inexcusably terrible even in the best shows and movies. But that's okay. It's smart and it's stupid, and that's more than fine because it adds up to something pretty great in the grand scheme of things. Mad Max Fury Road, The 400 Blows, Batman Forever, and Norbit are all movies, but obviously saying that you love movies doesn't mean that you love all of them, and if you love all of them, then that's fine too. And at this point, there's enough Star Wars out there that nobody should expect it all to be The Empire Strikes Back, or Knights of the Old Republic, or Andor. Sometimes it's also Caravan of Courage, or Super Bombad Racing, or even the PSA where 3PO catches R2-D2 smoking cigarettes.
Smoking does dreadful things to your lungs. And is very bad for your heart.
I mean, it's a good message, obviously, but it also makes no sense whatsoever. And come on, 3PO, mind your business. R2 has seen some shit. give the dude a break. Anyway, in episode 6 of this season of The Mandalorian, which is, our original topic that we should be talking about, we saw a great widening of the galaxy with a new planet with different cultures and biomes on it. We learned more about droid culture and their view of organic culture. We learned about some Ugnaught communication and several more very complicated rules of intergalactic diplomacy. The writers of this episode even managed to sneak in a surprisingly poignant note about the struggle of the underclass of droid workers and a question of morality of their roles in this planet's society, among many others across the Star Wars galaxy. And maybe there's something more to explore regarding Din's deep distrust of droids. Probably some room for self-improvement in that area. We saw Bo-Katan and Din Djarin's partnership progress as they solved a mystery that resulted in a character's surprise and misguided loyalty to Count Dooku's specific brand of murderous separatist terrorism. And you can't tell me that these actor cameos weren't at least joyful. They were fun, and that's something else that Star Wars is. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's something that's been able to endear generations of all ages for decades. And only being stalwart or only being for children doesn't get you there. Star Wars is simply everything. It's what connects us, it's what binds us, it's what penetrates us, if you're into that kind of thing. Maybe the only ruiner is our own expectations. This particular episode had notes of some of Star Wars' most corny and or infamously divisive moments. Din and Bo playing Deep Space Gumshoe was reminiscent of Obi-Wan in the case of the missing planet and the Camino and Kyber Dart back in Attack of the Clones. And the gaudy backdrop felt like similar stomping grounds to the much derided detour to the Muppet-infested planet of Canto Bight in The Last Jedi. And Jack Black, Christopher Lloyd, and Lizzo randomly popping up to goof around and chew scenery is about as campy as Harvey Korman, Art Carney, and Jefferson Starship showing up on the Star Wars Holiday Special. And say what you will about the Star Wars Holiday Special, it's what introduced Boba Fett, and it's pretty much what inspired The Mandalorian, so, I don't know, checkmate on that front. Plus, it's got B. Arthur as a singing bartender. But despite all of its Monster of the Week Saturday morning cartooniness, this episode also contains some pretty major beats for the larger ongoing story at hand. We saw a conclusive note to the lingering struggle over the Darksaber, as well as directions for the futures of Mandalore, Bo-Katan's destiny, and she has had an extremely long journey through the Star Wars media galaxy altogether, and of course, what Din Djarin's role as protagonist looks like going forward. Perhaps he isn't the future ruler of Mandalore, and maybe success for him isn't a throne, but traveling along with Grogu by his side first and foremost. We like that a lot for him, and after this reflection, we also kind of like this episode and what it represented for The Mandalorian and what Star Wars is doing overall. It's taking some weird risks, and, that's fun. Anyway, quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk about that Darksaber, so stick around. We'll be right back after these messages. Okay, so on top of those wild cameos, a bit of an important story point. Bo-Katan is the wielder of the Darksaber once again. After solving the droid mystery on Pleasure 15, Bo-Katan as a one-on-one with Axe Woves, who leads the Mandalorian mercs, and after winning the argument/fight, she tries to rally them all to her cause, which, of course, is retaking Mandalore. But when they don't immediately jump on board, Din Djarin tells them what happened beneath the mines of Mandalore. That weird little S&M cyborg defeated him and disarmed him, and then Bo-Katan had to use the Darksaber to defeat the cyborg, and by transitive property, that makes her wielder of the Darksaber and the ruler of Mandalore. Or whatever. The rules are all made up, but they're following them, so that's what counts. This explanation seems to work for them, and just like that, Bo-Katan has all of her stuff back, along with a bunch of battle-hardened Mandos to join her club. For all the weirdness this episode introduced, and there was definitely a lot of it, it ended on kind of a huge deal. Bo-Katan once again wielding the legendary weapon, and Din Djarin gets to focus on being a proud papa to the foundling Grogu. Little quick background here. The Darksaber is a mythical weapon created by Tar Vizsla, the first Mandalorian ever inducted into the Jedi Order. It's changed hands a bunch of times over the years, but finally it seems Bo-Katan has the experience and desire to wield it and put Mandalore first. Anyway, it seems like at this point, the show title The Mandalorian doesn't really just apply to Din Djarin anymore. If anyone in Season 3 of the show deserves the title of The Mandalorian, it's Bo-Katan. If she eventually goes back to Mandalore and rides that mythosaur around, that will only strengthen her claim, and that seems kind of like a thing that they're maybe sort of kind of setting up.
We've been on the journey of the show, and now that we're at this point, is that what does that title mean? And I think now with Bo possessing the Darksaber, I know that there was a lot of expectations that might have shifted, both in terms of what it meant for Din Djarin, but also for Bo, and what does it mean? Who is the Mandalorian right at this point? And so I think it could be anyone.
She's an exiled member of a noble house, slowly assembling the forces to return to her home and retake her rightful place on the throne. Does that sound familiar? Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni seem to fancy Bo-Katan as a riff on Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones. I mean, she even has baby dragons. 3 of them, no less. But it's clear by now that Season 3 has replaced The Mandalorian on us, and it's Bo-Katan and not Din Djarin who's going to be leading the Mandos back home. The question now is, will Bo-Katan be able to avoid the pitfalls that befell the Khaleesi once she finally accomplished her goal? And if I wasn't clear, the pitfalls in this case means burning a whole city. Just want to make sure that's abundantly clear. Then again, we already watched someone in Mandalorian armor riding a large reptile wrecking a city for political reasons when that Rancor treated Mos Espa like King's Landing back in Book of Boba Fett. Remember that? It's okay if you don't remember it or don't want to think about it. I'm fine with either. Anyway, what did you think of this weird episode? Is this peak Star Wars, or is it just too weird? And what's your guiltiest pleasure of goofy Star Wars stuff? And will Bo-Katan eventually follow in Daenerys Targaryen's footsteps, or is that just too on the nose, even for derivative modern pop culture? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching this episode of Canon Fodder. I am Max Scoville, and for more on The Mandalorian, here is why we think they're about to bring Moff Gideon back, so be sure to check that out, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch. May the Force be with you, this is the way, yada yada. Star Wars is pretty cool if you let yourself enjoy it. I'll see you around.